It sounds absolutely ridiculous, I know, but you have to trust me here. It is possible to draw lore implications, canon information about extremely important characters through trainer classes. And I don't mean the trainer classes belonging to important trainers, so think Champion Cynthia or Lorekeeper Zinnia. I'm talking about the trainer classes of completely random trainers on completely random routes. The little 2 words that appear when you fight a trainer, Buckcatcher, Lass, Youngster, those are the source of Pokemon lore. Well, not literally those 3, but others certainly are. Let me explain. From the outside looking in, trainer classes may feel incredibly unimportant and essentially just like flavor text. It gives us, as players, a bit of insight into what kind of trainer we have against us, which can help determine what sort of Pokemon they might have. But beyond that, it doesn't really impact things, it's purely included to make the world feel more alive and diverse. Now, I'm certainly not gonna dispute that that is the prime reason trainer classes exist, but make no mistake, this is not exclusively an out-of-game thing. This is not like the pause menu, experience points, or probably even turn-based battles, something that only exists within a game context but works differently in universe. We know trainer classes are an actual thing in the Pokemon world. Ace trainers are held to a certain standard and are of a higher standing. Pokemon Rangers are, well, actual Pokemon Rangers, and the same goes for the gazillion other classes that are really just jobs, like electrician, teacher, maid, janitor, the list goes on and on. Those are just as true in-universe as they are outside of it. Dragon Tamers are presented as such to us, the player, but they are also clearly meant to be of this specific class in-universe, otherwise they wouldn't wear that crazy outfit and have the canon explanation that they are all people who aspire to follow in the footsteps of Lance, who is a Dragon Tamer himself. Trainer classes exist canonically in the Pokemon world, that is a fact. But I'm willing to go one step further. Trainer classes may be canon and actually exist in universe, but I don't think the way they are presented to us, so Buckcatcher Timmy wants to battle, is entirely accurate. Or rather, I think it's easy to misinterpret what the term Buckcatcher in this example relates to. Your first idea surely is, oh, that's Timmy, the Buckcatcher. He loves bugs and so he calls himself a Buckcatcher. But I don't think that is the case. Instead, the trainer classes presented in this way are actually from the perspective of the player characters. Timmy isn't calling himself a Buckcatcher, Red is calling Timmy a Buckcatcher. And when Red encounters a gym leader, Team Rocket Boss or Dragon Tamer, he is correct, but sometimes he or other player characters are not so factual and instead show us rare signs of what their personality is actually like. I understand that this sounds like an enormous stretch and a half, so allow me to present my evidence. Terms you would never ever call yourself. After all, one of 2 things have to be true. If trainer classes canonically exist in the Pokemon world, and they do, then either the opponent identifies themselves as, say, an Ace trainer, or the player characters identify them as an Ace trainer. And as weird and wacky as the Pokemon world can be, I can't imagine anyone out there is introducing themselves as a burglar, a gambler, or the best examples, the suspicious lines of classes used in X and Y for Emma, suspicious child, lady and woman. She didn't walk up to Calem or Serena and introduce herself like that, complete with the question mark name. No, Calem and Serena describe her as a suspicious lady, suspicious woman, etc. Red comes across people breaking into the Pokemon Mansion and deduces, oh, this guy is a burglar. But the guy would never call himself that, Red just happens to catch him while breaking in. Same thing with the jogger class. Their job isn't jogging, it isn't all they do, the player character just runs into them while jogging and so calls them a jogger. Tubers are specifically stated to be children learning how to swim, but surely that is not all these children do all the time. No, they're just kids going about their day, and it just so happens that when we as players stop by, we meet them while they are swimming with their floaties, so call them tubers. Trainer classes make much more sense when viewed from the player character's perspective rather than the opponent's, it's that simple. Classes that the opponent may identify with, like Ace Trainer or Pokemon Ranger, are just the player character agreeing or correctly identifying what they are supposed to be, while others, like the aforementioned Burglar or Suspicious Woman, show the input and opinion of our character. Another very strong piece of evidence to support all of this are the group names that have started popping up ever since Gen 4. It may occur when trainers are paired up in double battles, creating duo names rather than just saying Buckcatcher and Swimmer, for example. There are a lot of cases where this happens, but almost all of them would be absolutely insane to call yourself, instead showing it's probably the player character getting their creativity on. Think of names like Brain and Brawn for a Psychic plus Black Belt, Daring Couple for a Real Staff plus Beauty, and Belle and Pa, a Ranger and a Cowgirl. And if you view trainer classes from that perspective, you can subtly deduce quite a bit about the personality of our player characters based on how they identify the trainers they come across. Believe it or not, even though our player characters don't talk and everything they say is decided by us, they do have canon personalities. One look at Pokémon Masters proves that. And while it is hard to see it in the actual mainline games, if we take trainer classes the way I believe they are meant to be taken, then we suddenly have a whole bunch of new lore drops about the main cast of pretty much every game. Take for example Red, and by extension Leaf. Because yeah, that is a flaw, I admit. There is obviously no difference in trainer classes depending on what genre you pick at the start of the game, so they share their personality by that logic. Anyway, looking at the Kanto games, we can see that Red, I'm just gonna refer to him since he was the only protagonist of the original, is surprisingly judgmental. There are several trainer classes in this game that have a certain subjective quality to them, which means it is Red's opinion. I think the best example by a long shot is Cue-Ball. Only in the Kanto games is this bald tough guy referred to as Cue-Ball. In other games they are called Roughnecks. It suggests that Red, unlike later protagonists that meet them, like Lucas, Dawn, and also the new generation of Chase and Elaine from Let's Go, Red isn't impressed or intimidated by them at all. He instead mocks their shiny bald head. It shows the confidence, the relaxed nature of Red that is only further amplified in Gen 2. Red, as well as Gold, Brandon and May, also refer to Ace trainers as cool trainers, which is a bit ambiguous as to whether this should be taken as the old name of the confirmed in-game status of Ace trainer, or whether these four just ran into Ace trainers and thought, damn, that's a cool trainer. Then again, that would mean Red would describe trainers wielding whips as cool. I don't know whether I like that. There are more fun, interesting ties and comparisons to make between Red and Gold, or even though. They are of course the protagonists of the first two Pokémon games and both partly travel the same land, so it makes sense they run into the same people on plenty of occasions, but there are slight differences as to how they interpret what they come across. The best example, albeit a not very telling one, is how they perceive Team Rocket. Red fights against Giovanni, who he correctly identifies as Team Rocket boss, but his underlings he perceives as Team Rocket admins. In Gold and Silver, Giovanni is out of the picture and his closest henchmen are now the top dogs, leading to Gold identifying the admins as executives instead, a naming difference that is kept consistent in even the remakes. We're talking fine details here, but the wording does suggest Gold views Archer, Ariana, Petrol and Proton as more serious than Red did. At least that's what admin versus executive feels like to me. An interesting similarity between the protagonists of the first two generations can be found when looking at how they view their main, well, rival. Both Blue and Silver are considered rivals by Red and Gold, and while we as the fanbase may consider a whole bunch of other characters that would follow afterwards rivals too, their trainer class is actually never rival. It's always Pokémon Trainer, showing that the only playable characters who truly view the rival character as their rival are Red and Gold. I think that's fitting too if you look at how Blue and Silver are compared to later characters. There are some names who could be considered to be assholes to the same degree, like Beat, but there is no personal connection between Beat and Victor and Gloria. Calling him a rival would be odd. Red and Blue have a clear personal connection, Rivalry, and Silver is definitely the most out there rival we had, seeing as he literally steals his starter. Going into future generations, quite some classes are reused, meaning we learn less and less about the player characters as a result, but we do get some interesting details on the DS. Lucas and Dawn hilariously failed to recognize what Red correctly identified as a gambler or a gamer, someone who likes to roll the dice, basically. The Sinnoh player character instead believes this to be a PI, a private investigator, even though their dialogue is riddled with gambling references. And yes, I know the use of PI here is the result of localization, removing all nods to gambling to preserve the age rating, I just thought it was funny. In Gen 5, an influx of new classes and playing around with Pokémon conventions allows us to learn some interesting things about Hilbert and Hilda. First of all, they're really into sports. In the stadiums found in Nimbasa City, you can find trainers with classes that are the sport they play, except Hilbert and Hilda showcase knowledge that goes beyond just recognizing what sport they play. They identify the soccer players as strikers, which is a position in the field in soccer, the American football player as a linebacker, another position, and the tennis player as a smasher, which shows they know enough about tennis to know what a smash is, which is an overhead shot basically. They are less versed in baseball, unfortunately. What they call an infielder, which is certainly an actual baseball position, is then revealed to clearly be a pitcher based on the sprite. Can't get them all, I guess. But hey, at least they share these gaps in knowledge with Rosa and Nate from Black and White 2. There is one thing that Hilbert and Hilda do differently from Nate and Rosa though, and it shows them as maybe picky or not really shallow? It depends on how you interpret it, but Black and White, as well as Scarlet and Violet, are the only Pokemon games that don't feature any beauties, meaning that, going by our rules, Hilbert and Hilda went through the entirety of Unova without running into a single woman they would describe as a beauty. Picky or not shallow? You tell me. Starting with Gen 6 and the big change that was customization, the personalities of our player characters started to become even less present. We could now decide what they look like and how they respond, and perhaps that is the reason why starting around this era, trainer classes started to get more boring and stale. Gen 6 still has something interesting to note, being that several classes are simple French words like garçon, boy, monsieur, man, and madame, woman, showing that even though Callum and Serena are new to Kalos, they are picking up some of the local terms. But going forward, this would kinda fade away. Elio and Celine use 0 Alolan terms for the trainer classes in Gen 7, they are all very descriptive, and the same thing is repeated for Gen 8 and 9, which can easily be seen as a reflection of how our player character isn't really a character anymore, but more so a stand-in for us as players, even more so than older generations. Like sure, those never talked, never expressed anything, but now we decide what they say and how they express themselves. And so, using trainer classes to showcase how they perceive the world is more so out of place. The sole exception to this rule are the literal latest examples. In the base game of Legends ZA, the familiar pattern is repeated. Still new classes, 0 big introductions, and nothing subjective to be found. But then came the Mega Dimension DLC, and here, Paxton and Harmony encounter their friends from Lumio City paired up in unconventional duos for double battles during hyperspace missions. And rather than just call them by their factual titles or their names, the player characters instead seem to come up with creative duo names, like Bolts and Brain for Canary and Ivor, Sisters in Suffering for Laban and Gwyn, and Patissier Pair for Grisham and Tarragon. It's a very rare moment, showcasing creativity on the player character's part, something that had completely faded away in especially the Switch era, with Scarlet and Violet the true low point. At least Victor and Gloria called a taxi driver a cabbie, Florian and Juliana just call everyone a student. But hey, maybe that also says something about who they are. Not very perceptive, focused on themselves perhaps. We'll see how that changes in the future, what the characters in Winds and Waves will prove to be like. But I think the most important takeaway from this entire video still stands firm. Trainer classes are revealed from the perspective of our character. Sometimes that matches who the people really are, and sometimes it just reveals Hilbert and Hilda have never played baseball. But what do you think? Do you believe this theory or do you have one of your own? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. And if you're also interested in either the Mario or Fire Emblem series, you may want to check out my other channels, Pichupedia and Nagapedia. Links are in the description. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.